Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Greg and Dominic podcast. Greg, how you doing, man?
I picked a really bad time to take a bite of my sandwich. Very
Oh,
professional. I'm very professional here.
well, this is all rare and rare and raw.
Well,
We just
let's
go with it.
let's
However,
address the elephant in the room first, Mr. Birthday Boy.
hey,
Happy birthday.
thank you, man.
Have you had a good day?
I have. I've been denying everybody their birthday wishes. I said to everybody, not everybody, to a lot of people. I said I'm I'm skipping this year because 66 is just too much for me to handle. It's outside my comfort zone. I'm not good with this, so I'm.
You get one leap year, I think, every 66 years or something like that. So if you want to take it.
I'm staying 65 for another year. The hell with it. Thank you for your birthday wishes, but no thanks.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. It's going too fast.
I'm done. Well, 65 is kind of like, okay, that's retirement age, but then 66 is like, that's over the edge.
Yeah. That's like retirement plus one. Yeah, that's you're four notches away from 70.
No shit. It's happening soon. And I know there's some people who are like, you're only 66? Stop whining.
Yeah. I want to be one of those like 88-year-old dudes chopping wood. Like, pulling my granddaughters around or great granddaughters around in wheelbarrows. Actually, for me, it'll be granddaughter if I'm lucky enough.
Yeah.
Considering our age gap between Isla and I. But anyway.
You'll do it, man.
Either way. Happy birthday, brother. Excited
Thank
to spend it this way with you.
Thank you so much. I can't imagine being anywhere else. I love doing this with you, and it's a great honor and pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you.
So our topic tonight is handling adversity, and it seems like every time we have a topic, the topic is like gigantic.
Yeah.
And handling adversity, especially with this thing called life, is it depends on, I think, on our mental state, if that's a way to say it, like the way that we handle ourselves. And when we're in the muck, in the midst of something that's adverse happening in our life, that's all that good, just meditate. Now that's all bullshit, because it's really when we're in that muckety muck, it's difficult. I know you're going through a difficult time right now. I've been through many in my lifetime, and so we're just going to talk about adversity and what's happening in the current moment. So adversity is one of those things that I think everybody, from the time that we're born, I mean, when we go start to crawl, that's adversity. When we start to walk, start to eat food that we've never tasted before, that's adversity. I mean, am I off the mark there?
No, not at all. I think I talked about this last week or the week before, but how many simple tasks where my daughter's like, Daddy, I can't. In that moment, she's feeling some level of adversity, and helping her learn how to deal with that adversity. And so, yeah, and I think you're right. And then, it's interesting as you were talking about, different things that are considered adversity, and what has felt like major adversity in my past today would be more like a bug bite.
That's a good way to put it. A bug bite.
Compared to, what I feel like I can handle today, or what I would call adversity today, or major adversity. Yeah. But I think like, and I love how you called out like how when we're in the muck of it, there's that part of us that's like, fuck it, I don't want to meditate. Like, I don't want to handle my shit. I don't want to actually deal with this. And I think there's like, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't advocate for that being necessarily the healthiest way, though. I think it's really important to acknowledge that's part of the deal. That's going to come up probably. This part of me that wants to say fuck it, this part of me that doesn't want to deal with it, this part of me that wants to run away from it. And quite frankly, you named it. Like, yeah, I'm going through a little shit right now. I don't know exactly where it all stands, but basically the woman who I love told me this morning she wants to be single and that she might be still having feelings for her ex. So that's sort of like one of those knife through the heart moments, you know. I was blessed, gifted enough to find out 5 minutes before a meeting I had to jump on for work.
Wow.
So that made it extra fun. And, you know, I will say this. Like, yeah, it sucks. I don't like it at all. I still don't like it. I've cried a little bit today. I've been angry a little bit today. I've said all the things you said, like, fuck it, I don't want to do it. I have dreams of, like, burying myself in my cave and, like, pretending like this never happened for a couple weeks and seeing what happens on the other side. But realistically, you know, it's interesting to observe myself in that moment. How did I respond? You know, I didn't get angry. I stayed present. I was sad. I was genuinely sad. But in the past, I know that it would have been easy for me to go to places like blaming or, well, you did this and you told me this and I can't believe you're doing this now, and all these different places where it's really easy to go. I think, for at least speaking for myself, when I'm hurt, it's very easy to hurt other people. So just learn. I've talked about this many times, learning how to sit with discomfort, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And there is like two things that kind of come up for me. There's the actual dealing with the emotions, which is the sadness, the grief, the anger, the upset. And then there's like maintaining the bigger perspective of it. And they do seem to be like paradoxical. They do seem to oppose one another in the sense that it's like, if I'm just feeling my feelings, well, then I'm just sort of giving myself a chance to get pissed, to get sad. But what I've found is that if I don't give myself those chances, then I have a really hard time dealing with it, getting through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think feeling the feelings is super important, but not to the point where they overtake me, where I'm not in control anymore. Because then I'm going to start creating feelings and actions that I feel worse about. And I think that's like, for me in adversity, particularly in like relationships with other people, that's where I think I've done a lot of growing, just not pinning my anger and sadness onto the other person. Because ultimately, while it might feel kind of good in that moment, I've never felt good about that in the long term. I've never felt good about blaming. I've never felt good about putting my anger on somebody else, no matter how justified it was. And that's interesting, right? Because, like, man, I've had some justified anger, as I know you've had, where it's like, man, it's totally okay to be angry right now. And do I want to put this on the other person? I don't think so. That's not fair for me. It's not fair for them. And then the other side of it for me is maintaining perspective. So it's like feeling the moment, the feelings in that moment of all of it, and being sort of that's sort of the short-sighted aspect of it, but not being so short-sighted that I dump on others. But the other side is like having some perspective. I've had my heart broken many times in my life, and I've had my heart broken in way worse, way more painful ways than what I've experienced today. Um, and there's a lot to be grateful for. There genuinely is a lot. Like, this is the healthiest relationship I've ever been in. This is an indication to me that, hey, this was working. Like, this was good. There's hope for me. But that there is that mental exercise for me in looking at something bigger than my current circumstance. Oh, woe is me. Everybody feels sorry for me. Everybody, like, I'm totally, like, I love it. I've been texting with people, and I love people being willing to listen to me and receive me, and I share about it and getting sort of that feedback, and that's great. But for me, handling adversity is about balancing the raw emotions of the experience and maintaining some level of perspective as I navigate it, as some compass that keeps me above all this shit to move forward. So that may have been a little bit of a cathartic rant for me as I'm sort of dealing with this. So thanks for the space to share all that. But I wonder if any of that resonated with your experience or what it means for you when you think about handling adversity.
Well, I think that we all go through it. I have certainly had my share. I still sometimes, I know this is kind of weird. So sometimes, not every single morning, but most mornings, I wake up, I put my legs over the bed, I'm sitting up on the edge, and I think about, okay, what's going on in my life right now? What do I have to deal with? What are the challenges? And then I kind of sort that out real quick. And thankfully, most of the time, I don't have a lot of real difficult things. And then there are difficult things that do happen. And so even at my ripe old age of 66,
I thought I was 65.
yeah, it's 66. At my ripe old age of 66, I still come up against, how am I going to handle this? And I'm much better now than I used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago at holding it all together, that, like, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to get through this. It's going to be okay. I'm going to come up with a better plan. I'm going to not get upset. A friend of mine told me one time that he was in a situation where he and one of his friends had put a bunch of money down on a real estate uh, venture, and then the guy, or person, it was a guy, but the person who was transacting that deal fucked him over and took the money and run their deposit. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it wasn't chump change. It was like a couple 20 or $30,000, right? So you can imagine, right? That's a whole different, so there's, the heart-wrenching love thing, and then there's the money thing, you know, and having 20 or $30,000 just pulled out from underneath you when, you know, and I'm going to say when they trusted someone. And I've had similar things happen, not to that extent. And the thing that my friend was telling me is like, so I'm working really hard right now and not being upset. And I was thinking to myself, in my unconscious state, I was like, are you crazy? You should be pissed off. And he's like, nah, I'm just gonna not be upset. And I'm gonna work really hard to figuring it out and getting the money back. So that was great advice to me to use in all different areas of my life. Now I've been divorced twice. I've been married 3 times. And so when I think about the divorce part of it, It's like there's people that want to get divorced, and then there's people that don't want to get divorced when their partner does. That's a whole different thing, right? You know, and then there's being like with a job, being fired and being thankful and grateful for being fired, or getting out of the job and then not wanting to get out of the job. So there's two sides of that story. You know, I went through a bankruptcy one time that was really difficult. And I really, I don't feel like I had the tools at that time to deal with it. So I spent a lot of time very upset. And looking back at it now, I can see that if I would have had those tools and would have had the expanded understanding that it's just money. And my dad even said that to me. Hey, listen, it's just stuff. It's just money. You're gonna get it back, and everything's gonna be fine. And in that moment, I'm thinking, are you out of your mind, Dad? $100,000 in debt right now, and this sucks. So I
Yeah.
was not, at that point in my life, I was not prepared for that particular level of adversity. I wasn't prepared. Now I think I'm better prepared, and I'm not in your situation, so I can't really speak about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about adversity in my experience is that when I'm willing to take responsibility, there's always something to learn. There's always a lesson. And even in the brief conversation I was able to have this morning, I'm looking at it from this lens of like, how did I create this? What did I what did I do to put myself in this position?
It's a good point.
And there's always something I did, right? Some I don't want to say red flag in this. There have been red flags in the past, but in this particular instance, I wouldn't say they were red flags, but they were things that like, okay, the fact that this is coming up isn't surprising. I just chose to like put my faith into it, understanding that there's some risk, and I think that's part of a relationship too. That's part of I think, and same with your situation. I think anytime I put myself in a situation where I have to invest something, whether it's my heart or my money, I'm putting something at risk, and um, and I have to be mindful of that going into the exchange. And then it does temper some of that in the moment adversity to some degree, where it's like, well, Greg, you signed up for this, right? Like, and in my world, I would much rather, go down swinging and, get knocked out than lose by a decision at the end of the rounds. That feels like sort of the I don't know. I mean, you're not a coward if you're in a boxing ring either way, but I'm the kind of guy that's just going to go down swinging, and I'm going to give it what I have, and I'll take some risks, and okay, it didn't work out. Cool. I learned some things, and now I get to move on. Now I get to learn from it and apply new lessons going forward. I thought it was really powerful what you're sharing with your friend saying, I'm just not going to be upset. And I remember, this reminds me very similar of something that my late best friend, and talk about adversity, we've all been through it, but my late best friend took his life almost 10 years ago now. That was another thing I had to go through, but I remember, and he was somebody who worked very hard on himself. He was very conscious, just a beautiful soul. And we both, like, throughout our life, would struggle with depression and like going to these like phases in our mind where we both just kind of say, fuck it. And I remember at a certain point, like, he stopped doing that. And I was like, and I was in one of my phases where I'm just like, I don't know how I can do this anymore, and da 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 da, and going down this dark hole. And he's like, you know what, Greg? I just stopped giving myself permission to go down that hole. And at the time I was like, what are you talking about? This hole is all that there is. Like, this is how I've learned to cope. This is how
That's
I've
what I
learned to
see.
survive going into this hole. What do you mean you just decided to not go in it anymore? Are you like, what does that mean? But just the introduction of that thought to me was so powerful. And I wrestled with it for years. Like, what? You can just like decide to not be upset? You can just like choose something else? I couldn't even comprehend that as a reality for myself at that time. So to hear you share something similar like that is really beautiful, because I do feel that way. I do feel like I get to decide if I want to be upset or not. I do decide if I'm like, yeah, okay. And there's a big difference between, like, I think, in my opinion, right, giving myself permission to feel sad. Like, that to me, that feels normal. Like, am I done crying? No, I'm not done crying. Like, I want to get it out. I want to get that shit out, get all that toxic energy out of my body so that I can see clearly. But to me, that's not necessarily like, that's like a conscious upset. It's like, I'm going to get upset so I can get through it, instead of this like unconscious, oh, I deserve to feel bad. I'm the victim here. I'm the one who is wronged. Everybody feels sorry for me. That's a totally different story that I've told myself in the past. And that's the story that, in this case, my friend was saying, I don't tell myself that story anymore. I just don't go down that road. It's so powerful, and it's doable. It is doable. And it took me years to figure it out, but like, I don't go to that place anymore. I don't get like, I hate my life depressed anymore, because like, there's a point where I'm like, Greg, just like, it's not worth it, dude. Don't go there.
Right. Well, the time frame. I mean, thinking about when I was younger, and somebody. I mean, I can't think of an exact example. What I do remember is that somebody would say something to me, and then I would be upset for a really long time, and it was because I didn't have the skill, the knowledge, the tools, whatever you want to call them, to shorten the length of time of being upset. And so I would hold on to, the the comment, I would hold on to the emotion, I would hold on to all that stuff. And I can say with certainty now that it doesn't really matter so much what people say to me. It's the, like you said, the circumstances that I get myself into. And that's how we take responsibility, like choosing to be in a relationship, choosing to purchase a car. Recently I bought a car several years ago. It's a Ford Focus. It's not the most, it's not a Beamer, it's not a Mercedes, it's not a Porsche, it's not, it's not one of these big expensive cars. It's a Ford Focus. And I pride myself, and always have prided myself, on taking really good care of my cars. And this particular car has had a known transmission issue. And so when I first bought the car, I was like, oh, those MFers at Ford, they, screwed me over on this transmission, and I got to pay another $3,000 to have the clutch changed out and all this stuff, and then thankfully, at least I have some consciousness that I walk around with to remember, hey, dipshit, who bought the car? Even though you didn't know that there was a known problem with the car, who bought it?
Yeah.
I did. So I don't have to blame other people. So then I got it, right? I can either deal with the situation as it is, or I can be upset. And so then I chose to deal with the situation. It's really been interesting because I have replaced the clutch. One time I paid $2,800, but then since it's on warranty, they keep giving me a free clutch. So about every 50,000 miles or so, I take it in. Yeah, the clutch is acting up again. Okay, they send, and they put a new clutch in.
So
Like,
you got smart. Instead of getting angry, you got smart.
that's right. So it's learning to shorten that that time frame of upsetness, because we don't really need to be there. And the way that I've been able to accomplish that is to remind myself all the time that it's the choices that I make that get myself into the circumstances that create the potential, things that could potentially happen. And things are, I mean, this is life. Shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's a relationship or a job or with my house or, you know, my health, whatever. And I can't even imagine what it's like for people that have health issues that all of a sudden, boom, it's a big health issue. Um, all I can think of is that we moderate our intake, because everything that we put into our body is going to affect the functionality of it. So the lower grade fuel that we put in is going to adversely affect the health of the organs. So who chooses, am I going to put chocolate chip cookies in my mouth, or am I going to eat a healthy salad?
Yeah.
It's really that easy. And if I get sick, and I have gotten sick a couple of times over the last several months, is because I'm, tipping the glass and going in that valley of not eating healthy. And then I get sick and I'm like, Dominic, wake the up.
Yeah.
Speaking of
In
which,
some one one way or another, I'm creating it, I think is what you're saying. And it's funny, right? Because like sometimes it's I don't know, I'm gonna go off a little bit here, but like going to the extremes, you could say, it would be so easy to say, well, I need a car, and had to get some car. How was I supposed to know I was going to buy this car with a bad clutch? Well, you don't need a car, right? That's a program we have based on the society that we live in. We think we need a car. So it's like this unbelievable blessing that you got to buy a car. And I don't mean to put this on you. This is like true for everything, right? Like it's this unbelievable blessing that I got to be in a relationship with a wonderful woman. And so it's like, how do I want to look at it? I don't need to be in a relationship. This is like gravy on top. This is just blessings upon blessings when I get stuff like that in my life. And I think it's an important thing to remember. Like, what is adversity? More, I would argue, for my life at least, 99+% of the adversity I've experienced is like, what is that cliche? First world problems.
Yeah.
Things that if other people were experiencing them in other cultures, they'd look at me and be like, dude, you're crying about that?
Right. Relative.
Yeah. So, I think there's room for humility. There's room for gratitude in adversity, and getting over myself, realizing that I'm not the only person in the world going through stuff. Now, it is nice to have, like we were texting a little bit earlier today, and nice to have you there to lean on you a little bit and kind of share what I'm going through. That I think that's a beautiful part of it. A very human part of adversity, but also keeping it in perspective really is useful. Like, man, I still have my beautiful 2-year-old daughter. She's healthy. I have a great job. I'm healthy. Like, come on, man. I'm still a good catch. Like, she can leave me, but like, come on, man. Somebody out there is fired up about me.
Well, we could be in Gaza.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Beirut or Somalia, and we're not.
Yeah.
So we have lots of good things happening. Yeah, it's intense. I was just earlier was looking up the the AI version of the definition of adversity. Adversity refers to challenges, difficulties, or hardships that people encounter in life. It can arise from various sources such as personal struggles, external circumstances, or societal issues. Adversity often tests an individual's resilience, adaptability, and strength. And while it can feel overwhelming, it also provides opportunities for growth, learning, and character development. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's pretty much what we've been talking about, and we
Yeah.
we can grow through the the difficult times that we have, and or not. And so it's how we use it. Did I get myself in the situation in the first place? Yep. Do I have anybody to blame? No. Take responsibility for making a choice. Yep. And I think that's a key. That's one of the things that I've learned. As long as I keep looking at who got myself into the situation, the less upset I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least that the other person could still learn how to be up. Could still be upset at myself sometimes.
Oh yeah. Right. Anyway, we'll get through it, and this is called life, and we have battle scars, and we have calluses that we create, and toughness, and I think that that's one of the things that also I feel for myself is that we've all been through a lot of really rough times. Life is not easy, and I don't think it's ever easy as long as we are in this form of being a human in society, having a job, being in relationships, having friends, owning things. It's all going to be a challenge, and it's how we hold it that I think is really the key. And there's never, again, in the muckety muck, there's never an easy or a quick fix or oh, it's going to be okay, Dominic. I'm like, right now, don't tell me that, because
Yeah.
it's not okay.
Yeah. Right.
But then again, with our consciousness, with our awareness of the situation, we can get through it a lot quicker. What's that old saying about the buffalo going through the storm? How does that go?
Well, yeah, buffaloes, they got that hairless butt thing going on with the big hairy front,
Right.
because when storms come, their MO is to run through the storm.
Yeah, they run into it. That's right.
Yeah.
So they run head on into the storm. Why? Because they get through it
Faster.
a lot faster. So just
Yes.
it's easy to
That's right.
say enjoy the trip, but whew,
Yeah. Well, it's part of the journey. And, I don't think anyone in their right mind is seeking adversity unless it's what we talked about last week, right? What was it that we termed it? Oh man, I'm putting us both on the spot here. It'll come. But
yeah,
I'm distracted now. I gotta look it up. It was intentional suffering.
right.
Yes, unless you're putting yourself through intentional adversity, which is a different sort of thing. Most people are not looking for adversity, and I think there's a couple things that I like to look at. One thing in particular, and that is this the same thing that was adversity for me 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? That's a real indication of how I'm thinking and living my life. If I have the same problems coming up over and over and over, that is a clue to myself that I need to work on something, that I need to change. And the amount of times, I'm sure I do it, and it's easier to see it in other people, where I see people like complaining about the same thing I had this friend who lived in this house, and for 3 years, all he would call me and be like, Greg, I'm so miserable here. If I'm not out of this house by December, you fly in a chopper and you airlift me out of this place. And I'm like, okay, bro, like, yeah, man, I'm here for you. And then like a year goes by. I hate it here. It's like, dude, what, like, how can we even have a friendship when you're talking about the same shit you were talking about 3 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So for myself, I like to use that as a gauge. Like, why does this problem keep coming up? That's a really good question to ask myself.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of blaming it on the circumstance or why does this always keep happening to me? Hey, brother, I'm the common denominator in this whole situation. It's time for me to realize I'm the one injecting that into the universe so that it's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a key, like one of those for me, like finer points of handling adversity. Like, how many times have I handled this adversity? Am I getting the lesson or not?
Well, that's what they say. I mean, that's what I've heard all, is if you're not getting the lesson, if stuff is reoccurring in your life, you're not getting the lesson. It's because of the choices that we're making. One of the, I'll say it again. I've talked about my course life plan, and the cool thing is it's like a 22 unit course that asks. It's all questions, get people to look, and then to take responsibility for the choices that they're making. And I think that what happens, and certainly happened to me many years ago, that I didn't have a really clear direction. I didn't really know. I kind of liked to was just going along with life. And I think that that's for some people, that's what they like to do. However, for the most part, from what I've seen and experienced, is that if I'm not directing my life, if I'm not creating my own path for where I want to go, and then and then being able to see the potholes and the pitfalls and all that stuff, then all that stuff kind of like happens to me. Whereas with my course life plan, I'm plugging it, is that it gives people a direction. And certainly I've done the course many times, and it always gives me a direction and leads me to a place where I can then see very clearly where I want to be 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, so that I'm not making the same bad choices over and over and over and over, and then wondering why my life is not happening the way I thought it was going to. So, um, yeah, uh, I've had friends like that too. I need to get out of this situation, and it's just about choices, and then people delay those choices, and they end up wasting. Like, okay, so we've been on now for 38 minutes and 30 seconds. That's it. We've used up 38 and a half minutes of our life on this podcast. We ain't getting that back. So if people are doing it for a year or 2 years or 5 years of being in a relationship that sucks, being in a job that they don't like, being in an environment they don't like, they're just wasting their life.
Yeah.
And I certainly have done that myself, and I do that less and less and less, and I think I'm enjoying my life more and more and more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think we talked about maybe wrapping this one up a little bit earlier, but there's, I think that's, that's it. It's like, do I want to change? And adversity is, I know you've heard this, the body, like if we were to never get sick, if we were to never get a flu, and then one day we like get a cut, let's say on our 30th birthday, we get a cut on our knee. Well, that's probably going to kill us because our body hasn't learned how to overcome something as small as a cut because it never had that like practice to like, okay, I've overcome a cut. Now I'm strong enough to handle that. And I think that's how life is. Like the things that are as adversity for my 2-year-old is very different from what's adversity for me as a 42-year-old. And I think if you were to throw, creating dinner and a bed and a warm place to sleep on a 2-year-old, they would struggle mightily. And it took me, a few years to get up to a point where I could, I've gone through enough adversity now in my life where I can create that for my daughter. But like, it requires this continual journey. And I feel like if my problems aren't getting bigger and juicier and more difficult, and I'm actually going through more adversity, that's my experience of myself. And I think this is why a lot of people don't work on themselves, because part of me is conditioned to just want to be comfortable. And the truth is that I grow when I handle adversity. So I have to be, at some level, intentional suffering. I have to be seeking adversity. I have to be learning how to handle the adversity mindfully and in new ways so that I can create higher levels of adversity, so that I can grow more and see more, so that I can create higher levels of adversity, and so on and so forth. And that's my experience, is that the more I work and grow myself, the more the adversity gets like, whoa, I didn't see this one coming.
Well, it just reminded me of when I was younger, and I'm talking about my teens, right? So my dad would always, not always, he would mostly do the maintenance on his cars. And so if we had to take a part off of the car, like the starter, back in those days, starters would go out all the time because they didn't have the, I don't know, they weren't mechanically sound or whatever, they would just fall apart. And so we would have to change a starter, for example. And there was always like 2 or 3 or 4 bolts on this thing. And my mentality at the time was, let's get the easy ones out first. And his was like, no. Let's take the hard bolts out first, and then the easy ones, no problem. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing. This is a great analogy for life. It's like, if we don't deal with the hard stuff first, like head on, like the buffalo going right into the storm, it's like, what is the biggest issue or problem or challenge? It's really a challenge, right? Problems are opportunities for growth, right? If we don't look at the challenges that we have first, the biggest ones, and go for those, a lot of people just want to handle a low hanging fruit, but the big ones still are looming out there, like, oh God,
Mm-hmm.
and letting them get bigger, because that's what they do. They just get bigger.
I'm reading this book on money, written by Anthony Robbins. It's actually a really powerful book. And that's one of the things he talks about. He's like, most people are so financially numb, they haven't even thought about creating a plan. It's like something like 40, 50, 60% of people haven't even thought or considered a plan. And I think it's because, it's just too big of a problem. I don't even want to deal with it. I can't even imagine a way I could deal with it. And so then this massive problem just sort of hangs out. And then until I elevate my level of thinking to a place of like, well, this is a problem. This is a problem.
It's the dark cloud.
I have to be willing. And one of the things you were talking about, there's a book written on that whole premise, Eat That Frog. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I think the author is Brian Tracy.
Yeah, Eat That Frog.
Yeah. And the whole premise of that book is, do the thing. Like, eating a frog is probably one of the lowest things that you don't want to do. It's like, I don't want to eat the frog. So if you eat the frog, Everything else after eating the frog looks kind of good. Like, oh, okay, read a book on finances for 10 pages. I can do that. I just ate a fucking frog, okay?
That's right. Yeah, I read that book a long time ago. Eat That Frog. And it's like, ugh, I don't want to eat a frog. That's a nasty tasting thing. But if you do that, everything after that, yum.
No big deal. Move on to the chicken.
Oh my God. Life is such a great adventure, huh?
It's the best game in town, man. The only game I want to play. Life as a human being.
Hey, life. Get yours while you can.
We got unlimited potential in this form of a human being. Unlimited choices, unlimited opportunities, unlimited ways to handle adversity or not handle it. It's remarkable.
I said to Diane this morning, she always says, Dominic, help me. I need to come up with a either a quote or a little exercise to do with her teams, And then so I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, okay, so what can I think of, So then I came up with thoughts without action are just thoughts without action. She goes, oh, that was deep. But it's true.
Yeah.
We have to add that action. And so the thing that I've always said that I think I learned at a very late part of my life is like the right action is the key, So if I don't think a little bit ahead about where I want to be in 2 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, and the further out that we plan, it becomes more obscure. However, if we don't put the thought into it, we are going to go on journeys, that take us in places where we never ever thought were going to happen. And so it's having the willingness to eat the frog and look further out and see, where do we want to land in 2 years? Where do we want to land in 5 years? And I've done that. And I tell you, I have created a lot of results in my life based on just doing that simple thing. In Life Plan, one of the things that I teach people is how to do mind maps. And I have on to my right over here, I've got 2 mind maps on my wall, and I look at them every day. And it's great because a mind map is a way to take all these thoughts and put them onto a piece of paper and then be able to look at the whole thing so that it's not so complicated. And there are even programs out there. What was the one that we started with? That's not quite a mind map thing.
Oh, Miro?
Miro.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of mind map software programs out there, even online. They're wonderful. And anybody can draw a mind map. Very few people take the time to go through a sequential, thought-provoking exercise that gets them to exactly where they want to go. So anyway, we're talking about adversity, and I think that my point is that we will have a lot more adverse effects in our life when we don't do the planning that we could be doing. We end up, in the gutter or the pothole or wherever because we didn't get there. And then we, if we're victim mentality oriented, we will look for things to blame. Well, that she said and he said, no. I didn't take the time to think about where I wanted to be, and then didn't take responsibility for making the choices that I could have made differently if I was a little more planned out. Now, how can you do that in a relationship in terms of your situation? I think, in my experience, in terms of relationships, that yeah, we choose to be in a more committed relationship based on what we experience in other people, and it's still a crapshoot, but we never really know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all we can do is communicate in a way that nurtures the relationship and moves it along in, in an evolutionary way.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And I think that's, it's well, I sort of lost my thought there. I lost where I was going with that.
that's all
But
right. That's all right. So anyway, we move forward.
yep, we sure do. I remember what I was going to say. And it's about, for me, learning how, like you bring up the relationships specifically. I think I would have gone through a period of my life where it would have been really easy for me to lower myself for the convenience of the situation. Maybe put things on myself that aren't warranted, just so that it's like easier. But in the past, we've talked about setting boundaries, creating clear expectations, honoring myself, and I think that's a really powerful tool for handling adversity. It's like, for me, I like to think about God as sort of my compass. Like, how would God want me to handle this? It's what is like the highest evolution of myself. What would it look like for that Greg to approach this situation? One that loves himself, one that still has kindness, respect, and care for the other person as well as myself. And still valuing myself in difficult situations where it can be easy to blame myself or put myself down or make myself less than. I think it's really important to, while dealing with adversity, to look at myself and realize I'm capable, I'm strong, I'm willing, like I got this. This is okay. This is fine. I can do this. It's no big deal. Well, it might feel like a big deal right now, but like it's fine. So,
Yep. We're going to get through it no matter what it is.
yep, always do.
It is. Just maintain a certain level of conscious responsibility.
I like that. Conscious responsibility.
Yep. Okay.
Shall we?
Till next time.
Till next time. Thank you, Dominic. Happy birthday again, buddy.
Thank you.
You the man.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And thank you all for watching, for listening. For those of you who have watched and listened, if you ever have any questions or comments, please. Whoa, who wrote that? Ginger. I have a cover over my thing because it's too bright, and I just pulled over. She was saying something here. Let me look at that real quick. Whoa, that's a big question or comment. What if we have an orbit like the planets? The patterns we are agreed upon with others to play a part for not just yourself is learning with others.
The image, I don't know if this is what you mean by this, Ginger, but like what comes to mind is sort of like the dance of the planets and how they play off each other, or even if you want to take it to a totally different scale, like molecules, atoms, protons, neutrons. the way that they dance with each other will create a totally different dynamic, and they need each other. And that based on the orbit or based on the energy, that's how and who we're going to attract and do this dance with. And that's the adversity we're going to create in our life, is through these orbits and through these dances. I don't know if that's what you mean, but that's what comes to mind when I read that. It's a cool comment.
Yeah, I think that's outside of my wheelhouse. I mean, I'm not a what do you call it? Planetary? No, it's called somebody who studies the planets and the stars. I'm not that person.
An astronomer.
What?
An astronomer.
Astronomer. She also says Tony Robbins took one small part of the human, I think, is expanding his experience. Tony Robbins' survival island on the planet being in game eating, the frog might get $1 million. I'm not totally following. And if you are on a plane that crashes in the Himalayan mountains, you might need to be prepared for a way out of the box. Food supply.
Yep, you're gonna have to be pretty darn prepared if your plane just crashed in the Himalayas. Good luck.
Well, I don't think that I'm going to ever get myself into that situation, because when it comes to flying in planes across the Himalayas, I think I would call myself a chicken shit.
Well, if I do find myself in that situation, I'll remember this talk and I'll say, you know what, Greg, you bought the ticket.
That's right. Take a lunchbox.
Ginger. I'll remember thinking of Ginger right before I buy my ticket.
That's right. Thank you, Ginger. Okay, Greg, be well, man.
All right, right back at you, Dominic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ginger.
Talk soon, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Ciao for now.